Penguin Random House Audio presents The Prized Girl by Amy K. Green. Read for you by Alex Mckenna and Taylor Meskimen. Chapter 1. Virginia. 5 days after. When my half-sister Jenny was killed, it was all over the news. National news, not just the local paper that had to use an offensively large font to fill its pages. Strangers drove great distances to be part of the fanfare. Reporters in their vans lined the street in front of the church hosting her funeral. I parked my dented Jetta along the side of the road about a quarter-mile away. There was no reserved parking space for me. St. Bernard's Cathedral was the only church aesthetically pleasing enough for my stepmother, Linda, to hold the funeral in. It was too large for the community. Even Christmas Eve Mass couldn't fill more than half the pews. Not today, though. Today, the local police were turning people away. Men and women were milling around crying, consoling each other. No one was smiling. Not even the polite, forced smile you use to mask pain. Just hordes of people looking truly devastated by Jenny's death. I didn't recognize any of them, and I highly doubted they had ever set foot in this town before. A dopey, uniformed officer named Brett stood at the base of the church stairs. We went to high school together. It was the type of town where, no matter the age, it felt like we all went to high school together in some shape or form. He looked exhausted, and his buzz cut was useless to sponge up the beads of sweat multiplying across his forehead. He just let them grow until they dripped off and splashed onto his shirt. Brett was a bouncer without a list, making gut decisions about who he could let into the church. I was fourth in line. An actual line that I had to wait in patiently to attend my own sister's funeral. It was my choice. I didn't deserve special treatment. I was not a good sister. I watched Brett turn two people away before recognizing the couple in front of me and allowing them inside without hesitation. When I stepped up for my turn, he looked up carelessly, locked on my face, processed who I was, and straightened his spine. "Virginia, hi. I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said. "This is crazy, huh?" He finally wiped his brow, altering the trajectory of his sweat beads. "Was I supposed to RSVP?" I joked. I probably shouldn't have. No jokes at funerals. "Of course not," he said, too nervous to get it. "Please, go on in." He stepped aside and extended his arms with such flourish it was as if I had the last golden ticket. It was loud inside. Churches were supposed to be quiet. The noise was unsettling. A group of sobbing women who must have gotten in just before Brett took the helm filled the last two rows. They looked like they were attending the Kentucky Derby. Are funeral hats a thing? The next few rows were a mixed bag of strange faces and town staples. It was easy to tell who the out-of-towners were because they ignored me. The people from town gave me intrusive, pitying looks, followed by immediate avoidance of continued eye contact. It was the same way when my mother died. Renton was one of those old New England towns where the founding families all spawned from some combination of people from the Mayflower. And for a long time, it was just the same names swapped around over and over again. Even though there were a lot more surnames now, it still felt to me like we were all from the same litter, destined to live and die where our ancestors had. Someday, I was going to leave and never look back. Just not today. I could see Linda in the front row amidst a few distant relatives of hers. Her outfit wasn't as on point as I'd expected. Her black skirt was wrinkled in the back, and her pleated blouse was, dare I say, frumpy. She hadn't touched her curling iron, which was a real shocker. Linda always curled her hair for events. Instead, the blonde strands, too long for her age, just fell flat against her back. I watched her face contort and quiver as people whispered things to her with delicate smiles. I knew she was hurting, but I was struggling to muster any sympathy. Jenny was her only child, her favorite little trophy, and Linda was a parasite. Every activity was a calculated move to help Linda feed off her daughter and reinforce her fragile ego. It was never more apparent than with the beauty pageants. From ages 5 to 12, Jenny won more Grand Supreme titles than anyone else in New England. I was told about it quite often, and Linda wasn't going to let anyone in this church forget it. Gigantic glamour shots of Jenny surrounded the coffin. In each one, a dead-behind-the-eyes little girl was dressed in a slightly provocative costume with enough makeup for a roadside hooker. You would think my half-sister had been some angelic being. There were just so many stories about the pageants and her beauty and how big her heart was. Her potential. These people were delusional. Jenny would have been 14 in 3 weeks. She hadn't done a pageant in months and was becoming a nosy little twat. I took a seat away from Linda next to an elderly couple who smelled like a forgotten attic. I didn't know them, and they didn't know me. The elderly strangers in the church seemed less creepy to me than the younger people attending the funeral of a child they didn't know. Old people just like to go to church. From a private door in the front, my father, the esteemed Calvin Kennedy, entered the church and joined his wife. I knew he was a suspect. The father was always a suspect in these sorts of things. Part of me hoped he was guilty. I found solace in fantasizing about all the horrible drop-the-soap-type prison cliches. I was not one for being out in public for extended periods of time. In Renton, everyone knew everything about everyone, or tried to at least. In the minutes it took me to pay for my gas, I could learn 5 to 7 intimate facts about my neighbors. World news didn't resonate. A good story was one you had to whisper for fear that the very person you were shit-talking could be lurking just around the next corner. My skin was crawling. I could feel the eyes on me. Suddenly, I was relevant again, and my secrets were fair game. I had to get out of that church. I slipped out of the pew, kept my head down, and made my way to the exit. Another A-plus decision for Virginia Kennedy. Jenny's funeral lasted a little over an hour. I waited outside, among the hedges to the left of the church doors. If I smoked, I'd have been smoking. Instead, I just chewed at my fingernails, trying to gnaw them even, each bite making it worse. I could hear everything. Linda's cousin read a poem she had written that rhymed. Some of Jenny's perfect little friends from school sang a song. And the priest talked forever about God choosing special children to stand by his side in heaven. The verbiage was particularly disturbing, given she was raped and murdered, left to die in the woods. Seems like he could have chosen her with a lightning bolt or something. When I heard pews creak and feet shuffle, I knew it was my time to fully commit to bailing. I hustled to my car, keeping my head down and praying I wouldn't cross paths with anyone who would attempt to engage. I didn't go to the cemetery. It was a selfish thing to do, but Jenny wouldn't know. She was too busy being God's personal assistant now. I went home to my tiny apartment where I could pretend nothing had happened. I could pretend nothing had happened to Jenny, or to me, or to
Sample complete. Ready to continue?